this is your hopefully 8-ish minute ab stability routine. So first, you're gonna get tuned into your transverse abdominis. So that's the one that does this motion, which is just drawing your abdomen down. Note that it is not doing this motion. So this motion is a posterior pelvic tilt, and then this motion is just sucking in your abs. So just kind of play around with that because we're going to talk a lot about that in this video. So if you even arch your back, so a little space in between here, you should still be able to draw your stomach in from its resting position. So we're going to start with some crunches. We're going to go for about 30 seconds here. When you crunch, you want to draw in both at the bottom and the top of your motion. So if you look down at your abdomen, you're not seeing that action, okay? So it's not a poofing and a flexing motion. It's more of that hollowing out. And when you feel like you can't hollow out anymore, that's when you either rest or just switch exercises. So draw in, crunch up, look down, draw in again, and then lower down. And eventually, you're able to crunch up and lower down the entire time while keeping your abs engaged. Okay, so next we're going to go to an oblique crunch. So you're just going to pull your shoulder blade up and over. And again, trying to draw in. And then since this is a stability program, we're going to try to keep everything here completely still. So some people will hike or shimmy their hips as they're crunching up. You want to just try and stay nice and stable in through your lower abdomen. Okay, we're going to go about 5 more seconds here. And then switch. I like to do these focusing on one side so you can figure out if you have one side that's stronger than the other. If you do, I recommend starting with the weak side, going to the strong side, and then going back to the weak side for a few more reps just to kind of fatigue that out. So about another 5 seconds here. The goal is to kind of get about 30 seconds each exercise to start, and then once you memorize this program, you can just build on that. Okay, so next we're going to start in a 90-90 position and do that action that I just did. So after you lift up your legs, you want to kind of flatten out your low back, get yourself ready for this position. And then the activity is simply straightening out one leg without letting anything here move. So again, we're not letting our pelvis arch, we're not letting our low back come off the ground, and we're just extending. And then hopefully this is pretty easy for you. So what makes this harder is if instead of starting at 90 degrees, you're here. Now, just know, just in that action, is it easy for your low back to have arched up off the ground? So better to keep it stable than try and push it. Another modification is simply letting your leg go closer to the ground, or you can do both legs at the same time. If you do feel some popping in your hips at all with this motion, you can externally rotate your leg. So when you straighten out that leg, your toes will be pointing to the side, and that should decrease the popping. If it's not popping, just stay nice and neutral. Okay, so next, we're gonna do a low trunk rotation crunch. So you're gonna let your knees simply flop to one side. Now, no, I'm still facing up towards the ceiling. You're gonna support your head with your hands and just crunching straight up to the ceiling. Again, trying to hollow out, draw in. If your neck gets tired at all through these, I always say it's time to strengthen your neck, but you can just put more weight into your hands. You can also give yourself a little bit of a double chin and look down right here. That will help lengthen the back of your neck. What you don't want to do is lead with your chin. You can kind of see how my ear has come forward. So just staying nice and snugged in through the neck and throat area. Okay, go ahead and switch side. So resist the temptation to shift your hips and then rotate over. Just start in a neutral position as if you're going to do a hip bridge, and just let your knees flop over to one side. And then you can begin crunching. You should feel this basically in your obliques, upper rectus, and hopefully in that transverse abdominis that has been figuring out how to hollow out your abdomen, how to give your intestines a hug, whatever phrasing works well and clicks in your brain. About 5 more seconds on this one. Also noting if one side felt easier for you. Nice, slow, controlled motion on the way down as well. Okay, so next, from this position, we're going to roll completely onto one side. So this is just a straight side crunch. Your top hand is going to be supporting your head. The motion is decreasing the space from your rib to your hip bone right there. And it's simply a side crunch. Try not to push off with that lower arm. If you find yourself cheating, you can always just kind of lift, rest that on your top shoulder. It's okay to rest the arm on the ground, but a lot of times I see people kind of pushing up for those few extra degrees. Okay, we'll switch to the other side, but while you're here, just go up into a side plank position. So a side plank is great just to get some stability after all of the movement. And what you're focusing here is a straight line. So if you were to look at a top view, straight line from my shoulder to my pelvis to my knees. So notice I started in kind of this position, and then when I come up, I push my hips forward. So there's that straight shot. And then again, trying to make yourself narrow by pulling your stomach muscles in. If this is easy, you can lift the top leg. You can straighten the top arm. You can also just press up onto your feet. So hold here for another 5 seconds or so. And then go ahead and switch sides. So again, lying just straight on your side. Top arm supports your head, and then just crunching up. If this bothers you in any way, you can play around with the position of your legs. It's not as important to have your legs in any specific angle in this exercise, so feel free to mix it up. You can play around with the breath, and if you exhale on your way up, that might help that transverse abdominis kind of hollow out your abdomen. Also note, I'm not hiking my hip here. So my waistband on my pants stays in the same exact position. There's nothing coming from that pelvis. It's all just from your trunk. Okay, prop up into that side plank position, elbow, shoulder, hips, and knees. If there's any problems in your shoulder joint with this, you can think about trying to get your rib cage as far away from the ground as possible. So a lot of times we want to just kind of hang into that shoulder joint. if you can engage everything in here, you push yourself away from the ground and then really contract all of those obliques on the under surface. And then again, paying attention to that position, it's super easy to get a little bit sunk back into that hip. So you want to come up and forward, and then same thing, modify if you'd like, or just hang out and focus on that drawing in. Okay, last exercise. On your back, you're gonna come up into a hip bridge position. And then these hip bones here that kind of come forward on your pelvis, they're called your ASISs. Those are going to be your markers. So those are what you need to focus on, either by feel or just by look, that they, when you lift that leg, don't move. So this is a stability hip bridge, and we're marching without letting anything rock like this. So a lot of times you're either wiggling and wagging, or when you lift that one leg, that's the hip that's going to drop. So really squeezing everything you got in the opposite leg before you lift that leg up. And then it's super common to notice a little bit of a weakness on one side. And again, always holding your stomach muscles in, using the fibers of that transverse abdominis that run horizontally to kind of resist that rotation in through your pelvis. And then same thing, make sure you're not cheating with your arms. Have your arms floating if you need to, or if you do find that your pelvis wants to drop, then feel free to use your arms in order to get that stability. So the stability is number one. We don't want to reproduce any repetitive micro trauma by getting the wiggling and the wagging in through your low back. Take a breather, that's it. Bring your knees up to your chest if that feels good too. And then that's all for today. Nice job.